Chapter 1, A soul returned and eerie silence blanketed the vast expanse of Duke Oliver's manor. The usually bustling servants and staff had vanished. Before the mountain pavilion, nestled against the mountain on three sides, two servants escorted a young woman, whose beauty was evident despite her current state. Facing her stood another woman, richly dressed and adorned with heavy makeup, exuding a seductive aura. The younger woman stared in disbelief. "Sister Isabella, aren't we sisters? Why are you treating me like this?" Isabella Grant sneered, not even glancing at her. "Emily Carter, should I call you foolish or naive? Blame it on the fact that we love the same man. Let me tell you this, in your next life, remember never to become sisters with your husband's woman. Just because of that." Emily Carter murmured, her expression darkening. "But Isabella Grant, if you kill me, His Highness will not spare you." "Humph," Isabella Grant chuckled softly, admiring her crimson nails. She leisurely accepted a letter from a maid, presented it towards Emily Carter, and then spoke calmly, "I'm not killing you. His Highness wrote this divorce letter. You're so heartbroken that you'll commit suicide. You'll kill yourself, understand?" With that, Isabella Grant nodded to the two servants holding Emily Carter, tossed the letter onto her head, and turned to leave. The two servants dragged Emily Carter towards the lake. Realizing Isabella Grant truly intended to kill her, Emily Carter panicked, ignoring the glaring words, "divorce letter," on the envelope, and struggled desperately. Don't kill me. Sister Grant, I beg you, please have mercy on me for our sisterhood. I promise, I will never fight with you for His Highness again. I swear, if you spare me, I will leave the royal palace immediately." Despite her pleas, Isabella Grant remained unmoved. She had planned this for a long time, and finally having the perfect opportunity to make Emily Carter disappear from this world, she wouldn't change her mind because of a few words. "Isabella Grant, if you kill me, I will haunt you even in death. You will die a gruesome death." Seeing her pleas were futile, Emily Carter despaired completely. She finally understood the extent of Isabella Grant's cruelty. This time, she was truly facing death. But she was unwilling, she hated so much. The two servants heaved together, throwing Emily Carter into the lake. Lotus blossoms bloomed on the surface, mesmerizingly beautiful, yet now imbued with a deadly allure. Emily Carter still struggled, trying to cling to the bank. Seeing this, one servant stepped hard on her hand, grinding his heel into her flesh. Emily Carter's beautiful face contorted in pain, but she refused to let go, knowing that once she did, all hope would be lost. Seeing Emily Carter's unwavering grip despite her mangled fingertips, the other servant flew into a rage, took off his shoe, and repeatedly struck Emily Carter's head. Emily Carter's head spun, and she finally succumbed, her body slowly sinking to the bottom of the lake. "My head is so heavy." Emily Carter frowned, her throat constricted, her entire body felt like lead, incredibly uncomfortable, urging her to move, but several attempts proved unsuccessful. Emily Carter furrowed her brows in discomfort. Suddenly, she felt something groping her, and heard curses, a man's voice. "Damn it, dirt poor, nothing of value on her, serves her right to die miserably." The man cursed as he pawed at Emily Carter's body. Looking closely, it was the servant who had beaten her with his shoe. Maybe hidden in her bra? Whatever, she's dead anyway, I'm picking up her body, I deserve some compensation, right? As he spoke, his hand reached towards Emily Carter's chest. Oh, a jade pendant, seems like she treasured it, must be something good. Haha. The man fumbled around Emily Carter's chest for a while. Emily Carter felt him take something from her, and tried to open her eyes to see, but to no avail. The man retrieved the jade pendant, but his hand lingered on Emily Carter's chest. Unexpectedly, her breasts are still so soft even after being dead for so long. TSK, if I could have touched them like this when she was alive, I would die happy. Emily Carter seethed with rage, murderous intent filling her heart. This beast, if she knew who dared to treat her like this, she would make him die a gruesome death. The man continued to fondle Emily Carter's chest, seemingly unsatisfied. The fury within Emily Carter burned like fire. Damn it, this bastard, if she could move, she would grind his bones to dust. As the man's hand neared her most private area, Emily Carter's eyes flashed open. Without thinking, she braced herself with one hand, twisted the other, and with a swift, clean over-the-shoulder throw, flung the man away. Caught off guard, the man's head hit the ground, knocking him unconscious. Emily Carter, having exerted too much force, stumbled, half kneeling on the ground. Taking a deep breath, she gritted her teeth and struggled to stand, habitually glancing around. What she saw stunned her. Aloft, the mountain pavilion, a small lake, the waterfront pavilion. Why were these surroundings so strange? What had just happened? Why hadn't she woken up earlier? How could she have survived that earth-shattering explosion? Where were the others? Countless questions flooded Emily Carter's mind. She shook her head vigorously, walked over to the unconscious man, suppressed the disgust and murderous intent within her, kicked him twice, and roused him. Speak! Where is this? ### Chapter 2, Extreme Panic. Emily Carter spoke coldly, but unexpectedly, the man who had just woken up saw her and immediately knelt down, kowtowing repeatedly, "Spare me, my lady! Spare me! I didn't kill you! Please don't haunt me as a ghost! Spare me!" Emily Carter frowned. Kill? Ghost? She squatted down, gripping the man's collar, her eyes filled with undisguised killing intent. "Don't play tricks with me. Tell me what happened." The man seemed terrified, his face pale and his breath shallow. It didn't seem like he was faking it. Emily Carter furrowed her brows. Was she that scary? Could she frighten someone out of their wits? Then how dare this bastard act so presumptuously towards her earlier? Remembering the man's previous depraved actions, the killing intent in Emily Carter's eyes deepened. Disgusted, she released his collar and said coldly, "I'm not a ghost, but I'm more terrifying than one. Don't test my patience. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me what happened." The man on the ground gasped for breath, and after a long while, he regained his senses. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly, "Yes, yes, yes. My lady, if you have any questions, just ask. I will. I will definitely tell you. Where is this? Why am I here? Who are you? This is Duke Oliver's manor, the villa. My lady. The man kowtowed like he was pounding garlic, stammering for a long time without uttering a complete sentence. Emily Carter frowned. If there was only one other living person here besides her, she really wanted to slap him and be done with it. My lady, because the prince, divorced you were distraught and committed suicide here. I am a servant of the prince's manor. My name is Benjamin Ford. I was sent to collect your body. My lady, I've told you everything. Please be merciful, spare my dog life, spare me. My lady. Benjamin Ford kept kowtowing as he spoke, and soon, bright red blood seeped from his forehead. Seeing Benjamin Ford like this, Emily Carter guessed he wasn't lying. Then, Emily Carter pursed her lips. Could she have been mistaken for someone else? But how could she explain these clothes? And the explosion? She was right at the center of it. Could she really have survived? Could it be, she had possessed a corpse? The idea of possessing a corpse was something she wouldn't have believed even if she were beaten to death, but now, there seemed to be no better explanation. Emily Carter's eyes narrowed. Whether dead or alive, possessed or not, she was the renowned battlefield medic of the 21st century. What was there to fear? No matter the storm, she would face it head-on. Emily Carter glanced at Benjamin Ford, who was still kowtowing non-stop, a cold glint flashing in her eyes. She pointed to the lotus pond not far away and said, "You, jump into the lake now and swim around it 100 times. Don't come ashore until you've finished. This, 100 times. What? You don't want to?" Emily Carter's eyes narrowed slightly, the coldness in them deepening. Benjamin Ford shuddered. No, I want to. I'll go right away. Benjamin Ford lowered his head and slowly got up, his eyes flashing. The moment he turned around, he suddenly threw a fierce punch at Emily Carter, the vicious glint in his eyes evident. Emily Carter watched coldly, snorting disdainfully. She slightly shifted her body to avoid Benjamin Ford's punch and suddenly kicked his kneecap. Ah! Benjamin Ford screamed miserably, falling to the ground in pain, looking at Emily Carter in horror. Emily Carter snorted coldly and kicked his other kneecap. These two kicks were merciless, shattering Benjamin Ford's kneecaps. Since you want to die, I'll grant your wish, Emily Carter said, grabbing Benjamin Ford by the collar and dragging him to the nearby lake. She took off his belt, tied one end around his neck and the other to a nearby tree, then kicked him into the lake. With his legs crippled, Benjamin Ford couldn't swim. He could only instinctively struggle, but the more he struggled, the tighter the rope around his neck became, gradually choking him. Emily Carter didn't bother with him anymore. This man, daring to offend her, should have thought about the consequences. Emily Carter looked at her soaked clothes and turned to walk towards the house not far away. There, surely someone could tell her more. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, someone bumped hard into her. Benjamin Ford, what are you doing? Why are you taking so long to clean up the body? Ah! A ghost! Emily Carter looked annoyed, assessing the frightened person in front of her, raising an eyebrow. And who are you? This man was one of the two who had thrown Emily Carter into the lake earlier, named Liam Carter. Now, seeing Emily Carter standing alive in front of him, he screamed and ran away without a second thought, his reaction so fast that Emily Carter was momentarily stunned. When she came to her senses, she could only rub her forehead speechlessly. However, less than a moment later, before Emily Carter could even leave the manor, Liam Carter returned with a group of guards, surrounding her. Emily Carter's eyes narrowed, ready to strike, when a charming voice mixed with fear rang out, "Younger sister, you're not dead?" Emily Carter paused. Younger sister? She saw a woman with a seductive appearance being hurriedly escorted by a maid, her face full of disbelief and a hint of fear. Emily Carter frowned. This didn't look like the expression of sisters reuniting. Who are you? The woman was taken aback and tentatively said, "I'm Isabella Grant, your elder sister Isabella. Don't you remember?" Emily Carter frowned even more and shook her head. At this moment, the maid beside Isabella Grant suddenly leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Isabella Grant looked at Emily Carter with a surprised expression, then nodded and said to the guards surrounding Emily Carter in a deep voice, "Emily Carter committed suicide. This concubine saw it with my own eyes. This woman is likely an impostor. To prevent her from causing trouble and bringing disaster to the prince's manor, I order you to capture her immediately." "If necessary," Isabella Grant finished, a barely perceptible cold glint flashing in her eyes, "you may dispose of the body." "Yes, your ladyship." The guards replied in unison, simultaneously closing in on Emily Carter. Emily Carter's eyes flashed coldly. "Have you ever seen a talking corpse?" Everyone froze, looking at each other. At this moment, Isabella Grant shouted, "I said she's an impostor, so she is. Do you dare disobey my orders?" Emily Carter's eyes turned icy. It seems that the person claiming to be her elder sister clearly wanted her dead. Killing intent flashed in her eyes. Emily Carter leaped out of the guards' encirclement and charged towards Isabella Grant. Isabella Grant didn't expect Emily Carter to have such skill and her face paled. At this moment, a figure suddenly shielded Isabella Grant. It was Liam Carter. Chapter 3, The Brawl. Emily Carter scoffed, lightly striking Liam Carter's Zhongfu acupoint. Liam Carter froze, immobile. Emily Carter sneered, sidestepped him, and seized Isabella Grant by the throat. "Who are you? Why did you try to harm me?" Isabella Grant gasped, eyes widening in terror. "It wasn't me. I was ordered to. She fainted mid-sentence. Suddenly, fragmented memories flooded Emily Carter's mind. The woman in the images was clearly her. She shook her head, and the memories vanished. Frowning, she released Isabella Grant and coldly addressed the guards. "Do you still intend to kill me?" The guards exchanged glances, none dared advance. Emily Carter snorted, turning to leave. "Humph, my manor hasn't been this lively in a while." A clear yet chilling voice rang out. Everyone knelt. "Your Highness." Emily Carter narrowed her eyes. "Your Highness," she looked up at the man before her, handsome, with striking features, but a sinister glint in his eyes that sent shivers down one's spine. She calmly observed the approaching man and woman, unmoving, her gaze placid. James Sinclair raised an eyebrow. Before he could speak, the woman beside him sneered, typical of a concubine's daughter, ignorant of basic etiquette. "Don't you know to kneel before His Highness and your elder sister?" Emily Carter glanced at the woman, about to speak, when another wave of nameless memories surfaced, accompanied by a dull ache. She frowned as James Sinclair spoke. "Can someone tell me what happened here?" Isabella Grant's maid crawled forward, trembling, and knelt before James Sinclair. "Your Highness, this woman, disgruntled by being dismissed by Your Highness, feigned her death and harmed the secondary consort." She pointed accusingly at Emily Carter. "Disgruntled by being dismissed, so she feigned her death?" James Sinclair echoed, his expression weary. "Pfft." Despite the tense atmosphere, several people chuckled. Realizing her blunder, the maid kowtowed. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I meant, disgruntled by being dismissed, she committed suicide and now, feigning resurrection, has returned to harm my mistress." James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter, his eyes narrowing. "So, you're not Human? Emily Carter sneered. What do you think? Insolent. Before James Sinclair could react, Amelia Carter shouted furiously. You dare speak to His Highness in such a manner? Do you have no regard for Duke Oliver's manners rules? Emily Carter smirked. The brief memories were enough to reveal the woman's identity. Amelia Carter, since when do Duke Oliver's manners rules come from an outsider's mouth? Are you disrespecting the Sinclair royal family? Amelia Carter was stunned. The clumsy, witless fool dared talk back? Her face flushed. Fine. Forget your disruption here, but you dare disrespect your elder sister? I'll teach you a lesson, lest people say the Ministry of Officials family lacks discipline. Her silk ribbon lashed out at Emily Carter. Under normal circumstances, Emily Carter wouldn't have blinked, but her body felt heavy, and she barely dodged the attack. Amelia Carter's eyes narrowed. Her useless younger sister knew martial arts? With a shout, she leaped, her ribbon swirling with forceful energy. Emily Carter rolled across the ground, narrowly avoiding the blows, but the exertion made her head spin. Gritting her teeth, she snatched a sword from a nearby guard, spun behind Amelia Carter, elbowed her in the waist, flipped her, and pinned her to the ground. Unfamiliar with such an attack, Amelia Carter was caught off guard. By the time she reacted, she was pinned, her refined image shattered. Used to pampering, she had never been treated this way. She thrashed like a shrew. Emily Carter, you dare humiliate me? I'll tear you to shreds. A cruel glint flashed in Emily Carter's eyes. We'll see if you live to see that day. Enough. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, James Sinclair finally spoke, his eyes dark and brooding. Emily Carter, you've hidden your talents well. I never realized you possessed such abilities. Emily Carter laughed coldly. Don't act as if you know me so well, Your Esteemed Highness Sinclair. Pray tell, what do you know about me besides my name, Emily Carter? James Sinclair froze. This was the first time anyone had dared to speak to him with such blatant defiance. Do you think that just because you could overpower Amelia Carter, you can act so impudently in my manner? Humph, Emily Carter looked at James Sinclair and laughed loudly. I think if I hadn't overpowered Amelia Carter, I wouldn't even be able to stand up straight. James Sinclair paused, then raised an eyebrow. This woman was far more intriguing than the rumors suggested. Chapter 4, Your Highness, how many lives do you have? Your Highness, you must seek justice for me. Isabella Grant, having just regained consciousness, saw James Sinclair standing nearby. She crawled towards him, clutching his sleeve and wiping away her tears, her pear blossom bathed in rain appearance somewhat pitiful. Your Highness, this woman, she frightened me. Boo-hoo, Isabella Grant pointed at Emily Carter. Seeing Amelia Carter pinned beneath Emily Carter, she had wisely refrained from calling Emily Carter a slut this time. A flicker of impatience crossed James Sinclair's eyes. He deliberately drawled, Tell me about it. She used tricks and illusions to frighten me. Your Highness, you must severely punish this woman. She's utterly audacious. She shows no respect for Duke Oliver's manor, nor for you. Emily Carter silently watched Isabella Grant's tearful accusations. She didn't interrupt, her expression remaining impassive. She wanted to see what these people before her could do to her. Oh? But I'm curious. With so many guards present, how could Emily Carter possibly use tricks and illusions to frighten you? Furthermore, I heard that Emily Carter had attempted suicide. I never expected so much to happen in my absence. Isabella, you manage the affairs of the inner court. James Sinclair's tone shifted, and everyone could hear the subtle defense of Emily Carter in his words. Not only was Isabella Grant stunned, but Emily Carter also raised an eyebrow. The surrounding maids and servants gaped in astonishment. Was Prince Sinclair reprimanding his concubine and defending a recently dismissed servant girl? Your Highness, Isabella Grant opened her mouth, but looking into James Sinclair's unfathomable eyes, she found herself speechless. James Sinclair ignored her, gently pushing away the hand clutching his sleeve. He calmly addressed Emily Carter, "You've held this position long enough. Aren't you tired?" Emily Carter blinked slowly, releasing Amelia Carter. Before Amelia Carter could retaliate, she said coldly, "If you dare to lay a hand on me again, I won't hesitate to cripple you right here. Don't test me." Amelia Carter flinched, sensing the chilling tone in Emily Carter's voice. She dared not act rashly. James Sinclair frowned, a slight smirk playing on his lips. He took a few steps towards Emily Carter and said, "I will have someone investigate this matter. In this manner, you are under my protection. Return to your quarters and wait." James Sinclair leaned closer to Emily Carter's ear, whispering, "But I am very curious. Just how many secrets are you hiding?" The corner of Emily Carter's lips curled upwards. She turned to meet James Sinclair's gaze, her voice soft yet filled with an enigmatic quality. "Then you should be careful. Curiosity killed the cat, as they say. A cat has 9 lives. I wonder, Your Highness, how many do you have?" With that, Emily Carter turned and walked towards the main gate. Fragments of memories were flooding back into her mind with increasing clarity. James Sinclair telling her to return to her quarters suited her perfectly. Emily Carter didn't see the faint shadow that appeared behind her shortly after she left, following the same path. This is Emily Carter's residence? If the memories resurfacing in her mind hadn't confirmed it, Emily Carter would have doubted whether she had left Duke Oliver's manor and wandered into a slum. The house before her eyes, calling it a house was generous, a thatched hut would be more accurate, was exposed to the wind on all sides, lacking even a single tile on its roof. It had no door, only a tattered curtain flapping violently in the wind. Emily Carter couldn't help but fall silent, not because she cared about the living conditions. After all, she had slept in graves on the battlefield. This, though shabby, was far better. Her silence stemmed from the original owner's circumstances. As fragmented memories connected, Emily Carter finally understood. She had transmigrated. She was no longer her former self. This body, like her own, was named Emily Carter, the daughter of the current minister of the court. But as a concubine-born daughter, she was unloved. Some time ago, for unknown reasons, she caught the eye of Prince Yi and was brought into his manor. Strangely, since her arrival, Prince Yi hadn't spared her a second glance, let alone touched her. Nominally a concubine, she was treated like an ordinary maid, even worse, which led to the servants of Prince Ye's manor looking down on her. At Isabella Grant's instigation, the manor's steward had casually assigned her to this dilapidated, abandoned stable. With no family to rely on, no favor from the prince, and a meek personality, Emily Carter could only imagine the contempt and hardship she endured in this princely manor. Clenching her fists, Emily Carter suppressed her anger, her face expressionless as she walked towards her residence. At the entrance, a faint bloodstain caught her eye. Emily Carter's pretty face turned icy. Lifting the curtain, the scene before her nearly made her spit fire. The already cramped room was a mess. Tables, chairs, bedding, and clothes were strewn about, shards of porcelain scattered everywhere, clearly ransacked. Suppressing her fury, Emily Carter flipped through some dry clothes. Though not very clean, they were thankfully intact and wearable, better than the soaked garments she wore. Finding an empty spot, Emily Carter prepared to undress, but a sharp pain shot through her as she untied her sash. Only then did she notice her left index finger, mangled and nearly bone-deep. Chapter 5, difficult to part during the previous scuffles, her nerves had been taut, numbing the pain. Now, relaxed, the throbbing agony surged, piercing to the bone, driving her mad. Damn it! Emily Carter gritted her teeth, her eyes cold. Isabella Grant, you bitch! Miss, you're alive! Thank goodness! Just as Emily Carter finished changing and prepared to leave, a small figure rushed towards her. Emily Carter froze. The person clung to her, wiping away tears and sobbing, "Wah, miss, you scared me to death. They said you killed yourself, but I didn't believe them. I ran to check, and when I couldn't find you, I ran back. Humph, I knew it. Miss, you're so strong, you wouldn't kill yourself." Emily Carter assessed the person before her. Small and frail, only 12 or 13 years old. From the original owner's memories, she knew this was Mia Hayes, a maid who had grown up with her. "Come on, Mia Hayes, don't cry anymore. I'm all right, see? You've got snot and tears all over me. Isn't that messy? Miss." Snubbed by Emily Carter, Mia Hayes pouted, feigning a sulk, but her eyes were full of mirth. She nuzzled against Emily Carter, sighing in relief. She had been truly frightened, but now that she saw her mistress was unharmed, she felt at ease. Mia Hayes' small gesture didn't escape Emily Carter's notice. A touch of warmth rose in her heart. This girl had always held genuine affection for the former Emily Carter. Patting Mia Hayes' back, Emily Carter softened her voice. "Mia Hayes, tell me what happened in the room. The blood at the door, is it yours?" At the mention of the incident, Mia Hayes' small face crumpled, her expression filled with terror. Looking up at Emily Carter, she cried, "Miss, let's go. Let's leave this royal manor. The people here are terrifying. They stole our things and hit me. Hoo-hoo." Emily Carter now noticed the slight swelling at the corner of Mia Hayes' mouth. The anger in her heart couldn't be contained any longer. "Tell me, who did this? Miss." Mia Hayes was startled by Emily Carter's sudden burst of energy. She stared blankly at her mistress, momentarily speechless. Seeing Mia Hayes like this, Emily Carter sighed. In the past, the two of them had been bullied countless times, but they had either comforted each other or simply endured it, never seeking retribution. They had simply survived. Mia Hayes' lack of response was understandable. However, she wasn't the same Emily Carter as before. She would make sure everyone knew that anyone who dared to bully her or her people would pay the price. Gently embracing Mia Hayes, Emily Carter said softly, "It's all right, Mia Hayes. Don't worry. From today onwards, I will protect you. No one will dare to bully you again. Hoo-hoo, miss." Upon hearing this, Mia Hayes' tears flowed again. "Miss, let's go. Let's leave this place." Emily Carter stroked Mia Hayes' head. "We will leave, but not now." She took Mia Hayes by the shoulders. "It was Isabella Grant's people, wasn't it? Where are they? Take me to them." Miss, what are you going to do? Mia Hayes looked at Emily Carter, a strong sense of unease rising within her. Miss, they won't listen to reason. We should just leave. Emily Carter gave a cold laugh, a bloodthirsty glint in her eyes. Won't listen to reason? Then we'll speak with our fists. The past is the past. From now on, I will settle every old debt, starting with this blood at the door. Mia Hayes stared at her mistress, her face now filled with a strange allure, completely devoid of its former fragility. She was truly different. But why did this new Emily Carter fill her with such joy? Emily Carter coldly surveyed the building before her, sneering inwardly. These maids and servants truly knew how to enjoy themselves, occupying her courtyard and relegating her to the stables. But she was no longer the pushover she once was. With a resounding BM, Emily Carter unceremoniously kicked open the courtyard door. This is my courtyard. Everyone inside, get out. The courtyard instantly erupted in chaos. 2 matrons and 4 maids rushed out. The lead matron, upon seeing Emily Carter, angrily barked, "You wretch! So, you survived one suicide attempt and think you're invincible now? How dare you cause trouble here? Do you have no respect for Consort Isabella Grant?" Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. This matron had some wit, invoking Isabella Grant's name to make it difficult for her to accuse them of overstepping their bounds. However, it seems the matter of her martial arts skills had been suppressed. Otherwise, the matron would have been more restrained. Too lazy for further nonsense, Emily Carter walked up to a maid in a yellow dress and coldly stated, "You're the one who made Mia Hayes vomit blood." The maid, seemingly intimidated by Emily Carter's aura, looked around at the 5 others with her and, seeing Emily Carter was alone, found some courage. She retorted, "Yes, it was me. What are you going to do about it? Besides, that wench couldn't handle a beating. I only hit her once." So it's Mia Hayes' fault." Emily Carter scoffed, turning around. "Mia Hayes, get in here." Mia Hayes had been terrified since Emily Carter kicked open the courtyard gate and was still trembling. Hearing Emily Carter call her, she hesitantly stepped inside. Seeing Mia Hayes' state, the maids sneered. "We thought Miss Carter had some powerful backing to be so arrogant. Turns out it's just this timid maid. Miss Carter, don't be naive enough to think the 2 of you can cause any real trouble." Chapter 6, First glimpse of brilliance. Emily Carter ignored them, coldly addressing Mia Hayes. "If you want to stay by my side, drop that timid act. Come here." Mia Hayes bit her lip, seemingly surprised by her mistress's harshness. Tears threatened to spill again. Emily Carter, paying her no mind, looked at the yellow-clad maid. "Want to retaliate?" Mia Hayes bit her lip, nodding then shaking her head. The corner of Emily Carter's lips twitched upwards. She suddenly moved, a gust of wind in her wake, returning to her spot in a blink. Everyone was startled but didn't understand why. "You wretch! What did you do to me? Why can't I move?" the lead matron suddenly shrieked. The others, startled, realized they were immobilized. Slap! Emily Carter's eyes were icy as her right hand flashed out, the matron's right cheek instantly swelling. "That's a lesson. Next time you speak out of turn, I'll cut out your tongue." The matron shuddered but dared not speak. Emily Carter snorted. "I've only pressure point immobilized you. You'll stay like this until morning. Consider it a small lesson. But remember this, I didn't bother with you before, letting you bully others. From now on, anyone who acts up in front of me will wish they were dead. Silence descended upon the courtyard, thick enough to hear a pin drop. They were immobilized, like fish on a chopping block. Even the most foolish maids and matrons wouldn't dare contradict Emily Carter now. Mia Hayes, go. However she hit you, return it blow for blow. Emily Carter pointed at the yellow-clad maid, picking up a wooden stick and handing it to Mia Hayes. Miss. Mia Hayes bit her lip, fearfully looking at her mistress, still in disbelief. Mia Hayes, remember, never be soft-hearted with vicious dogs. Only by hitting them hard, making them fear you, will they not dare bite again. Being tolerant to those who don't deserve it only encourages them. Emily Carter turned and entered the main room, ignoring the flustered Mia Hayes. She believed Mia Hayes would gradually understand her intentions. This society never showed mercy to the weak. Entering the main room, Emily Carter was slightly surprised to find it quite well furnished, yet unoccupied. After casually strolling around, she discovered the maids and old women in the adjacent room. Apparently, the rules of Duke Oliver's manor weren't so terrible, at least not to the point of allowing them to truly overpower the mistress. I seem to have missed a good show. Emily Carter hadn't been sitting back in the main room for long when a clear male voice came from outside. The corners of Emily Carter's lips curved slightly, not at all surprised. Your Grace arrived sooner than expected. James Sinclair raised an eyebrow, speaking calmly, it seems you knew I had people following you. His tone was even, yet without a hint of shame at being exposed. That person's lightness skill isn't bad, but they don't know how to avoid the flow of air. Discovering them wasn't difficult. Oh? James Sinclair's interest was piqued. Nathaniel Crowe was one of the top spies under his command, yet to be assessed as easily discovered aroused his curiosity. What do you mean by avoiding the flow of air? Emily Carter realized this era hadn't yet developed to the point of utilizing the principles of physics. She stretched, saying, Your Grace, it's late, shouldn't you be leaving? Was she dismissing him? James Sinclair smiled faintly. What if I said I'm not leaving tonight, and will stay here overnight? If it were back in the stables, I wouldn't mind Your Grace staying, but now, Your Grace, haven't you forgotten that you've divorced me? Are you blaming me? James Sinclair asked, stepping closer to Emily Carter. Blaming me for letting you sleep in the stables before, or blaming me for divorcing you? Emily Carter shook her head, chuckling. Your Grace, don't think too highly of yourself. Don't forget, we're not acquainted. Is that so? James Sinclair's narrow, long phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. One hand lifted Emily Carter's chin, leaning close to her face, whispering, Then how about this? Are we a little more acquainted now? At this moment, the distance between them was only a finger's width, their breaths mingling. The posture was exceedingly intimate. Emily Carter's eyebrows furrowed almost imperceptibly, yet her face maintained a faint smile. She said, Your Grace came here, is it just to tease me? The corners of James Sinclair's lips curved slightly. If you're interested, I'm also willing to lower myself to indulge you. Emily Carter sneered. Then it's unfortunate. I just happen to not be interested. Your Grace doesn't need to pretend with me anymore. You may not be tired, but I'm bothered. If you have something to say, say it directly. Hearing this, James Sinclair paused, his smile fading. He said, I thought you knew why I came to find you. Emily Carter froze, her eyes flickering slightly, but her faint smile remained. She said, Then I'm afraid I've disappointed Your Grace. This humble woman has always been foolish. How could I possibly guess the thoughts of such an important person as your grace? James Sinclair snorted coldly, casually finding a chair and sitting down. He said, as you said, although I don't know much about you, I have heard things. Your behavior today is completely different from before. Do you think I'll believe a person can change so much in just a few days? Then what does your grace think is the reason for my drastic change? Emily Carter's red lips pursed slightly, but she didn't directly answer James Sinclair's question, instead silently looking at him. I believe there are only two explanations. First, you are not Emily Carter. Second, you've been pretending all along. But no matter which one it is, I'm afraid you have another motive, and it's not a small one. Emily Carter snorted coldly, if you've died once, you won't be as weak and incompetent as before. James Sinclair froze, then heard Emily Carter continue, does your grace really think I would commit suicide? Sensing the sarcasm in Emily Carter's voice, James Sinclair raised an eyebrow, saying, so, you're saying someone framed you? Emily Carter sneered, if I intended to commit suicide, I wouldn't be here wasting words with you like this. Your Duke Oliver's manner, I'm afraid, isn't what you think it is. Chapter 7, Revenge. James Sinclair's face darkened, he remained silent. Seeing this, Emily Carter continued, in truth, Your Highness and I both understand, what kind of person I am is fundamentally unimportant. Ultimately, when you married me before, you merely saw me as a pawn. Since that's the case, why should you bother with what kind of person a pawn truly is? You seem to have a very thorough understanding. James Sinclair nodded, not denying it, then shifted his words. It's just that if a pawn transforms into a sharp sword, this king cannot help but be wary. Emily Carter gave a cold laugh. The former Emily Carter was powerless and incredibly weak, with nothing remarkable about her. If James Sinclair had brought her into the manor because he liked her, Emily Carter wouldn't believe it even if she died. Then there's only one explanation, he married her to use her. The former Emily Carter didn't understand, but that doesn't mean the current Emily Carter doesn't. I've already said, having died once, I won't be like before, allowing others to slaughter me. Furthermore, if I had any schemes, I wouldn't have waited until now, and certainly wouldn't have let myself almost be killed. James Sinclair looked coldly at Emily Carter. The two stared at each other for a long time. James Sinclair finally stood up and said, I will personally investigate your identity. For now, you just stay here obediently. After saying that, James Sinclair walked out the door, his voice echoing from afar. From today onwards, Emily Carter will temporarily reside at Dowley Courtyard. All living expenses will be according to the rights of a secondary consort, but without this king's order, Emily Carter is not allowed to leave Dowley Courtyard half a step. Watching James Sinclair's back disappear, Emily Carter slightly narrowed her eyes. Did this mean he wanted to confine her here? Oh well, Emily Carter shook her head, never mind him. Being able to stay here wasn't bad either, at least she could settle the score, and conveniently have someone take care of her food and clothing, so why not? The moon had risen high. Emily Carter stretched, today's commotion had been tiring, it was best to rest well, and deal with other matters tomorrow. The next morning, Emily Carter had just woken up and was preparing to wash her face when she saw a little maid running in a panic, kneeling down and saying, Miss, please come quickly, Mia Hayes is critically ill. What? Emily Carter was shocked. In just one night, what had happened? Without time to think, Emily Carter hurriedly ran out of the room. In the courtyard, the maids and old women she had immobilized yesterday were nowhere to be seen. Emily Carter paid them no mind, rushing to Mia Hayes' side. Mia Hayes' entire body was stained with blood, her face pale and frightening, her eyes closed, her mouth still muttering deliriously, her situation extremely critical. Seeing Mia Hayes about to bleed to death, Emily Carter immediately carried her into her own room, while quickly instructing, "Bring a piece of ginseng here, quickly. Also, prepare a tub of hot water, fill it with hemostatic herbs and red dates. And, borrow a set of acupuncture needles from the manor's physician, hurry." Yes. Everyone didn't dare to delay, immediately scattering to prepare. Not long after, everything Emily Carter needed was ready. Emily Carter placed the ginseng slice in Mia Hayes' mouth, then began to undress her. Mia Hayes' face showed pain, her delicate features becoming distorted with extreme agony, her mouth constantly moaning, it hurts so much." Emily Carter's killing intent surged. Damn it! Unable to touch her directly, they continually tormented those closest to her. It seemed her methods were still too lenient. As Mia Hayes' clothes were removed, the killing intent around Emily Carter nearly solidified. Her eyes fell upon a tapestry of wounds. Mia Hayes' body was almost entirely covered in injuries. Looking closely, whip marks, knife wounds, bruises, nearly every kind of injury imaginable was present. Each wound oozed blood. In just one night, Mia Hayes had suffered such grievous injuries. Emily Carter bit her lip, drawing bright red blood, but seemingly unaware, she lifted Mia Hayes into a wooden tub. Taking out silver needles, she began acupuncture. With her medical skills, healing Mia Hayes wasn't difficult, but what startled her was that several of Mia Hayes' wounds were fatal, yet the girl had endured. This last. After carefully treating Mia Hayes' wounds, Emily Carter took a deep breath, suppressing the murderous intent in her heart. Stepping into the courtyard, she pulled aside a maid tending the flowers. "Do you know where Mia Hayes went yesterday?" The maid hesitated, stammering, it seems, she was called to Serenity Court. Serenity Court. Killing intent flashed in Emily Carter's eyes before disappearing. Slowly, she uttered the words, "Isabella Grant, it was you, after all. Very well, I will make you pay." Her voice was ice cold. Night fell. Emily Carter stealthily infiltrated Isabella Grant's quarters. Isabella Grant was bathing, only a young maid tidying the bed remained in the room. Emily Carter silently approached, striking the maid's nape with a swift chop, rendering her unconscious. Casually strolling around Isabella Grant's room, Emily Carter placed the maid behind a screen. Then, grinding the poisonous mushroom spores she'd found in the courtyard into a powder, she added it to Isabella Grant's tea. Lightly leaping onto the rafters, she settled down comfortably. The show was about to begin. After her bath, Isabella Grant felt slightly tired. As it was evening, she wore only a chemise as she went to sit at the table. Picking up her teacup, she took a sip, preparing to retire to bed. No sooner had she stood up and taken a few steps than she felt dizzy. Halos seemed to appear before her eyes, blurring her vision. Isabella Grant shook her head, wondering if she was simply overly fatigued. Just then, light footsteps suddenly echoed. A series of sounds erupted overhead. Isabella Grant, startled, looked up, but found nothing. Immediately after, countless rustling noises arose from all directions, impossible to pinpoint. Panicked, Isabella Grant shouted, "Who's there playing these tricks? Come out!" Chapter 8, Playing Tricks, Are You Addressing Me? Emily Carter let her hair fall, obscuring half her face, hovering mid-air as she coldly regarded Isabella Grant. "Ack!" Isabella Grant shrieked. "A ghost!" She bolted from the room, screaming, "Help! A ghost! A ghost! Someone help!" Soon, a crowd gathered in Duke Oliver's manor. Isabella Grant, seemingly delirious, ran around frantically, still yelling about a ghost. Emily Carter observed this with satisfaction, a slight smirk playing on her lips. It seemed the fungal spores were working. Isabella Grant appeared to have lost her mind. James Sinclair arrived at Duke Oliver's manor to find Isabella Grant clad only in her undergarments, running about and babbling incoherently. His face paled. He ordered someone to subdue her and take her back to her room. Then, turning to the assembled servants and guards, he said coldly, "I don't want to hear a single rumor about tonight's events. Do you understand?" Seeing James Sinclair's anger, no one dared hesitate. "Yes, Your Highness," they chorused. James Sinclair nodded to the steward beside him and was about to head towards Isabella Grant's room when he caught a glimpse of a rope flickering on her roof. Before he could speak, his shadow guard gave chase. Hearing the whoosh of pursuit behind her, Emily Carter cursed inwardly. Careless. She knew in her current state, escape was impossible. Resigned, she stopped and faced the menacing figures in black. "Don't bother," she said, her lips curling. "I won't resist. I'll come quietly." The men in black, their faces impassive, grabbed Emily Carter and escorted her back to Duke Oliver's manor. James Sinclair stared coldly at Emily Carter. "Why are you here?" Emily Carter met his gaze. "Whatever you think." "Humph." James Sinclair scoffed. "Didn't I forbid you from leaving Thowley Courtyard?" "Ha!" Emily Carter let out a scornful laugh. "My great Princey, haven't you forgotten that you divorced me? Why should I obey you? What right do you have to command me? Who do you think you are?" A collective gasp arose from the surrounding servants. Had they heard correctly? Was Emily Carter questioning the prince's authority? "Who am I?" James Sinclair's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer, a smirk playing on his lips. "Divorced? No authority?" Looking into James Sinclair's narrow, seductive phoenix eyes, a flicker of unease ran through Emily Carter. Steeling herself, she returned his gaze. "That's right. You have no right to order me around. I'll do as I please, go where I please. You can't control me." "Very well," James Sinclair nodded, beckoning to his steward. "Alexander Shaw." "Yes, Your Highness," Alexander Shaw replied respectfully, producing a letter from his robes. Emily Carter recognized it as the divorce letter Isabella Grant had brandished before trying to kill the original Emily Carter. The former Emily Carter, near death, hadn't cared about the letter, letting it fall to the ground. But how did it end up in James Sinclair's hands? James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter, holding the letter. "This will cease to exist." With a slight exertion, he ripped the letter to shreds, scattering the pieces on the floor. "Now, you will remain by my side forever. I control everything that belongs to you." "You?" Emily Carter's face paled. She glared at James Sinclair. "You're shameless." James Sinclair chuckled coldly, his expression unchanged. The air crackled with tension. "Emily Carter, you bitch." Isabella Grant's voice cut through the air. Having recovered, she emerged, fully dressed, and glared at Emily Carter. "You poisoned me, didn't you? You pretended to be a ghost to scare me. You vicious woman." "Vicious?" Emily Carter sneered. "Would you like to see how many wounds are on Mia Hayes's body?" At the mention of Mia Hayes, Isabella Grant's eyes flickered. She threw herself into James Sinclair's arms, sobbing. "Your Highness, Emily Carter humiliated me. I've lost all faith. I might as well die." James Sinclair looked at the weeping woman in his arms, a strange irritation rising within him. Suppressing his impatience, he soothed her. There. It's all right now." Isabella Grant wasn't about to let it go. Her sobs intensified. "Your Highness, Emily Carter disrespects everyone. You must seek justice for me. She even jumped into the lake to kill herself. She's bad luck. You mustn't keep her." "Isabella Grant, I've discovered your acting skills are truly remarkable. Compared to you, those Oscar winners are amateurs." Emily Carter spoke before James Sinclair could reply, her eyes filled with mockery. Isabella Grant's eyes flickered again. "What do you mean? I don't understand." "Ha!" Emily Carter sneered, grabbing Isabella Grant's wrist and pulling her close. In a low, chilling voice, she whispered, "Those who harm me will live to regret it." Isabella Grant's body trembled. James Sinclair abruptly pulled Emily Carter away. "I find you increasingly intriguing." "Is that so?" "I'm honored." "Thank you for your attention, Your Highness," Emily Carter retorted coldly. James Sinclair raised an eyebrow and suddenly pressed Emily Carter against the wall. Chapter 9, settling the score. Seeing this, the surrounding people tactfully withdrew. Isabella Grant, though unwilling, didn't dare to be reckless and was pulled out by Alexander Shaw. "Emily Carter, this king finds himself reluctant to part with you. What should I do?" Emily Carter, holding James Sinclair's hand, said coldly, "Your Highness, please respect yourself." "Respect myself?" James Sinclair's lips curled slightly. "I'm having children with my concubine. Is there a problem with that?" Emily Carter gritted her teeth. "I don't agree." Hearing this, James Sinclair smiled but said nothing more. He suddenly picked Emily Carter up and carried her to his room. Emily Carter glared at James Sinclair. "What are you going to do?" James Sinclair chuckled. "What I want to do." James Sinclair then forcefully kissed Emily Carter. Enraged, Emily Carter bit hard on James Sinclair's lip. He cried out in pain but didn't release her. The thick scent of blood spread between their lips. Not long after, a crab scuttled by. The next day, Emily Carter coldly looked at the glaring red stain on the bed, her narrow eyes filled with ice. A moment later, a quick-witted maid arrived, smiling at Emily Carter. "Miss, you're awake. His Highness instructed me to help you dress and make up." Emily Carter glanced at her coldly. "Where's James Sinclair?" "James Sinclair?" The maid was stunned, then looked at Emily Carter meaningfully. "You mean His Highness, right?" "This morning, he was invited by the minister, who said he had something to discuss." Emily Carter, expressionless, turned to get up, but found her whole body aching. She almost fell, but the maid, startled, quickly supported her. "Miss, your body is weak, and you've just gone through that. Discomfort is unavoidable. Don't push yourself. Lie down and rest. You'll recover after a while." Emily Carter gritted her teeth and pushed herself up again. I want to leave here. Seeing Emily Carter's persistence, the maid reluctantly helped her up. All right, Miss Carter. I'll help you back to your quarters. Oh, right, His Highness said that Dali courtyard is too small, and you'll stay at Yiting residence from now on. You wouldn't know, but Yiting residence is one of the best courtyards in the manor. His Highness treats you so well, the maid continued talking, but Emily Carter didn't hear a word. In her mind, the events of last night replayed over and over. She bit her lip, her eyes filled with resentment. Since childhood, when had she ever suffered such a great injustice? James Sinclair, I won't let you get away with this. The next few days were relatively peaceful. Strangely, James Sinclair didn't come looking for Emily Carter again. But that was fine, because Emily Carter wasn't sure she could control her anger and not kill him with a sword if she saw him again. But clearly, she was no match for him right now. So, Emily Carter enjoyed the peace and quiet, taking the opportunity to heal. In her free time, she could brew flower tea, one of her favorite pastimes from her previous life. Mia Hayes's wounds, after Emily Carter's dedicated care, had also improved a lot. At least now she could walk freely and do some light work. Sister's courtyard is truly magnificent. It seems His Highness truly favors you. Today, as Emily Carter was checking Mia Hayes's wounds, a series of clear voices suddenly rang out from the doorway. Emily Carter frowned in recognition, slowly finished examining Mia Hayes, and then got up to greet them. Isabella Grant and several other concubines of Duke Oliver's manor were pointing and commenting on Yiting residence. Seeing Emily Carter emerge, Isabella Grant, leading the group, unceremoniously shouted, "Emily Carter, you are so bold to make this consort and my sisters wait for you." Emily Carter looked up. Isabella Grant's face was full of anger, and the other concubines' expressions weren't much better. Isabella Grant had probably bad-mouthed her quite a bit on the way here. A slight smile curved Emily Carter's lips. She said calmly, "Speak if you have something to say, fart if you have to, don't just make a racket like an old woman." Hearing Isabella Grant being scolded like an old woman, many maids giggled. The other concubines were even more audacious. Their usual harmony with Isabella Grant was merely superficial. How could they maintain her face now? "You!" Isabella Grant, enraged, turned pale and glared at Emily Carter. "You are just a lowly concubine. How dare you be so impudent to your superiors?" Emily Carter looked at Isabella Grant indifferently. "You're the one making a scene at my residence. I didn't force you to yell. Even if there's a mistake, it's not my fault." "You!" Isabella Grant glared at Emily Carter, then suddenly changed her tone. "So glib. Fine, then let me ask you, why didn't you kneel and pay respects when you saw this consort and the other concubines? Do you look down on us, or do you look down on Duke Oliver's manor, look down on His Highness?" Hearing this, a glint flashed in Emily Carter's eyes. The corners of her lips curled slightly. "I was being disrespectful. I beg your forgiveness, esteemed concubines. Emily greets you all." Emily Carter bowed, taking the opportunity to move closer to Isabella Grant and pinch her hard on the waist. Chapter 10, Sisters Tea Ceremony. Emily Carter's pinch, imbued with considerable force, left Isabella Grant reeling in pain, nearly unable to stand. Seeing this, Emily Carter quickly rose to support her, solicitously inquiring, "Concubine Grant, what's wrong? Are you unwell?" Isabella Grant, her hand numb with cold, looked at Emily Carter and was about to speak when she met Emily Carter's icy stare. Startled, she hastily retreated a few steps, stammering, I'm fine, I'm all right. Emily Carter smiled, saying, that's good. Since the concubines have arrived at the winter quarters, why not sit for a while? I invite you all to enjoy some freshly picked flower tea. The concubines exchanged glances. They had come to see this newly favored concubine, and even if Emily Carter hadn't invited them to stay, they would have found a reason to linger. So they all nodded, saying, then we'll trouble younger sister. Emily Carter smiled faintly, leading them into the parlor. Isabella Grant, trailing behind, still felt uneasy. A chill permeated her, unsettling her thoughts. Only one thought remained, Emily Carter, how terrifying. As Emily Carter led the concubines towards the main hall, a woman in a pale silk dress spoke, younger sister's courtyard truly exudes spiritual energy. To cultivate oneself in such a place, how enviable. Emily Carter glanced at the woman. In recent days, she had become acquainted with most of the people in the Duke Oliver's manor. This woman was Harper Sullivan, from a minor merchant family, a pampered daughter. From a young age, she had shown exceptional talent, particularly skilled at playing the guqin. Years ago, her rendition of the Lanling melody had captivated the capital, earning the attention of Duke Sinclair, who brought her into the manor as a concubine. She had always enjoyed the Duke's favor. Smiling, Emily Carter addressed Harper Sullivan, if concubine Sullivan is fond of this place, please feel free to visit often. Hee hee. Harper Sullivan giggled, but before she could continue, Evelyn Moore interjected, her tone provocative, the place is fine, but I think the person is more important. I wonder if you have the ability to control the spiritual energy here? Emily Carter calmly looked at Evelyn Moore, feigning a shy smile, concubine Carter is right, but this is the Duke's arrangement, so it's not for us to comment. This, indeed, isn't for us to comment. Evelyn Moore faltered, unexpectedly echoing Emily Carter's words, surprising Emily Carter. Although Evelyn Moore was a concubine of Duke Oliver's manor, her position rested solely on her family's influence. She was merely a naive young woman, somewhat arrogant and unruly, but with a simple mind. All right, concubines, this is the Swallow Hall. Please be seated. I've instructed the maids to prepare premium flower tea, it will be here shortly. Hey, are you really planning to just have us drink flower tea here? Everyone sat down except for a woman in purple robes, who glared at Emily Carter with dissatisfaction. This was Abigail Walker, the last of the Duke's 4 concubines. Emily Carter smiled at Abigail Walker. What guidance does concubine Walker have? Abigail Walker raised a haughty eyebrow. I heard the Duke favors you greatly, and I wondered what kind of person you were. Turns out you're just a country bumpkin who doesn't understand the etiquette of receiving guests. It seems I've come here in vain. Abigail Walker turned to leave. Concubine Walker, wait, Emily Carter rose to stop her, smiling, all of you are esteemed concubines. I naturally know you wouldn't be interested in ordinary flower tea. However, my flower tea is not ordinary. As for its specific effects, why doesn't concubine Walker try it before judging? Emily Carter, since you speak with such certainty, we'll try it. But if your flower tea isn't as good as you say, don't blame us for accusing you of deceitful words. It was Isabella Grant who spoke. She had recovered from her earlier fright, realizing she had been intimidated by Emily Carter. Feeling both embarrassed and angry, she seized the opportunity to add fuel to the fire, seeing Abigail Walker's displeasure. The other 3 concubines remained silent, tacitly agreeing with Isabella Grant. Isabella Grant looked triumphantly at Emily Carter, her eyes filled with undisguised hatred. Emily Carter smiled faintly, a flicker of coldness in her eyes, and calmly replied, "Of course." Soon, 4 maids brought 5 cups of flower tea, placing them before the 4 concubines, not in teacups, but in bamboo tubes. Isabella Grant frowned, slamming her hand on the tube before her, saying coldly, "Emily Carter, what do you mean by this? Using such vulgar vessels, the color is clearly just water, and there's no fragrance at all. Do you take us for 3-year-olds, daring to deceive us like this?" The other 3 concubines looked at Emily Carter. Though not as aggressive as Isabella Grant, their expressions were displeased. They clearly shared her sentiment, believing Emily Carter was mocking them. Emily Carter simply smiled, offering no explanation, but turned to the other 3 concubines. "Why don't the 3 of you try the flower tea before judging? Even I wouldn't dare to offend all 4 concubines at once in this situation, wouldn't you agree?" Harper Sullivan and the others exchanged glances, then nodded, each taking a small sip from their bamboo tubes. But after that single sip, none of them put their tubes down. Isabella Grant, puzzled, looked at Emily Carter, who remained calm, as if she had anticipated this reaction. Seeing Emily Carter's composure, a sense of unease crept into Isabella Grant's heart. It seemed something had been wrong from the very beginning. Chapter 11, The Unclean Affliction. A moment later, Harper Sullivan was the first to set down her teacup, her usual cold demeanor unable to conceal a hint of admiration. "I never expected younger sister to possess such a high level of flower tea brewing skill." Emily Carter smiled politely, but before she could speak, Evelyn Moore exclaimed in surprise, "Your tea is truly delightful. How did you do it?" Abigail Walker's face held a trace of embarrassment. After a moment's hesitation, she said, "I was rude earlier. I didn't expect younger sister to be willing to share such a precious thing with us. I wrongly accused you." Emily Carter chuckled softly, "Not at all, you esteemed concubines are too kind. Emily was merely fortunate enough to receive guidance from a tea master and learn a little about flower tea." Seeing everyone praising Emily Carter's plain water, Isabella Grant's face became extremely unsightly. "Emily Carter, just who are you? Could it be you've used some sort of enchantment on these concubines, causing them to praise your plain water so highly?" Hearing this, Emily Carter laughed, about to speak when Harper Sullivan said, "Elder Sister Grant doesn't understand. This isn't plain water. Younger sister used a special technique to infuse both the flower and tea fragrances into the water. I've only seen this technique in ancient texts and thought it was merely a legend. I never imagined it was real." Indeed, Evelyn Moore added, "It's a pity Elder Sister Grant didn't get to drink it. You don't know how delicious this tea is. The moment it enters your mouth, the rich fragrance of flowers and tea overwhelms you, making you feel like you're lost amidst a tea garden and a sea of flowers. It's so relaxing, I don't know how to describe it, only to say, exquisite." Though Abigail Walker didn't speak, her expression clearly agreed with Harper Sullivan and Evelyn Moore. Seeing the 3 people she had instigated to confront Emily Carter now seemingly won over by a cup of flower tea, Isabella Grant's face contorted with rage. Gnashing her teeth, she turned and stormed off, flicking her sleeve. "Emily Carter, don't be so smug. Just you wait." Emily Carter sneered contemptuously, "Take your time, I won't see you out." "Younger sister Carter, about that?" Evelyn Moore looked at Emily Carter, hesitating slightly. Emily Carter smiled faintly. The current situation suggested that James Sinclair's other 3 concubines weren't the type of jealous, air-headed women she'd initially assumed. She also didn't want to make enemies unnecessarily, so she politely said, "I still have quite a bit of flower tea. If you esteemed concubines enjoy it, please take some back with you to brew at your leisure." The 3 concubines were clearly delighted but still feigned hesitation. "How can we be so presumptuous?" Emily Carter's lips curved slightly. "Besides its delicious flavor and relaxing properties, this flower tea is also a superb beauty treatment. You esteemed concubines are all beauties who could topple empires, but surely you wouldn't mind becoming even more stunning, would you?" "What?" Hearing that the flower tea could also enhance beauty, the eyes of the 3 concubines lit up, forgetting all their prejudice against Emily Carter. What woman doesn't care about her appearance? Is that true? Of course, Emily Carter nodded firmly, then turned to Mia Hayes and said, "Go, wrap a pouch of flower tea for each of the 3 esteemed concubines. Remember, you must use the finest silk to hold it." Mia Hayes nodded and turned to leave. The 3 concubines rejoiced. "Then we thank younger sister." Emily Carter smiled politely. "Not at all, you esteemed concubines are too polite. Emily has just arrived at the manor, and I will need your guidance in the future." "Don't worry, we will help you," the 3 concubines replied without hesitation. The 4 chatted for a while longer. Seeing that it was getting late, Harper Sullivan and the other 2 rose to take their leave, showering Emily Carter with thanks once more before departing. After seeing the 3 concubines off, Emily Carter rubbed her temples and sighed, intending to return to her room to rest when she saw Mia Hayes rush in, panting and looking at her anxiously. "Miss, it's bad. Concubine Grant has had an incident." Emily Carter calmly looked at Mia Hayes, reached out to pat her chest, and then slowly said, "If Isabella Grant has had an incident, you should be happy. What's there to panic about?" "But..." Mia Hayes looked worriedly at her mistress. "Miss, you don't know. Tonight, His Highness originally summoned Concubine Grant for the night, but she never arrived. His Highness sent someone to check and found that something had happened to Concubine Grant. Her hands are covered in a red rash, both itchy and painful. She's scratched it to the point of almost breaking the skin. Everyone is saying that Concubine Grant only felt unwell after returning from our place, so they all believe that Miss wanted to harm her." "Oh?" Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. "She didn't drink my tea, she didn't eat my food, and moreover, the other concubines were all there this afternoon. If she's fallen ill, what does it have to do with me? Come, Mia Hayes, let's go see." When Emily Carter arrived at the Duton courtyard, it was already crowded with people. Almost all the physicians in Duke Oliver's manor were present, and Harper Sullivan and Evelyn Moore were also there. Seeing Emily Carter arrive, Evelyn Moore pulled her aside and whispered, "You must be careful. That Isabella Grant insists that you poisoned her." Emily Carter shrugged indifferently. "We were all together this afternoon. Whether I had the opportunity to poison her or not, the 2 of you know better than anyone. A clear conscience fears no accusation. Let her say what she will." Evelyn Moore nodded. "That's right," then patted Emily Carter's shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'll testify for you." Emily Carter smiled. At this moment, Isabella Grant also saw her and immediately, despite the physician's advice, struggled to stand up, her face ferocious as she pointed at Emily Carter and shrieked, "Emily Carter, you vicious slut! You're so cruel, daring to poison me! I'll tear you to shreds to relieve my anger." Emily Carter looked at Isabella Grant coldly. "Don't speak nonsense without proof. It's clear you contracted some strange disease due to your promiscuity, yet you blame it on me. How laughable. Chapter 12. A grim countenance. At that moment, James Sinclair arrived at the Rehung Clinic, just in time to hear Emily Carter pronounce Isabella Grant afflicted with a venereal disease. His face darkened. Emily Carter, I never knew you had such medical expertise. Truly remarkable. Seeing James Sinclair, Isabella Grant immediately adopted a pitiful demeanor, weeping and wailing, Your Highness, it's this Emily Carter who has harmed me. You must seek justice for me. James Sinclair glanced at the glaring wound on Isabella Grant's hand and coolly questioned the physician, What happened here? This. Speak. Seeing the physician's hesitation, James Sinclair's expression grew even grimmer. Witnessing James Sinclair's anger, the physician hastily knelt. Forgive me, Your Highness. Please forgive me. Allow me to examine her again. Examine her again. Humph, useless fool. James Sinclair flicked his sleeve, about to unleash his fury, when he heard Emily Carter calmly interject, Physician, you've only examined Consort Grant's arm. Perhaps you should examine her forehead closely. Then you'll know what ails her. Hearing this, James Sinclair shot Emily Carter a sideways glance, then abruptly grasped her chin in one hand. You best mind your place, he said coldly. Emily Carter pressed her lips together, her gaze defiant and icy as she met James Sinclair's eyes. Seeing this, James Sinclair raised an eyebrow. This woman, repeatedly challenging his authority, truly didn't know the meaning of fear. With that thought, he gradually tightened his grip on her chin. Emily Carter simply stared back at him, her gaze unwavering. At this point, prompted by Emily Carter's words, the physician seemed to recall something. He bowed respectfully to James Sinclair. Your Highness, he reported, this young lady speaks the truth. Consort Grant, she is indeed afflicted with a foul disease. Ah! Those present recoiled in unison, their faces etched with astonishment as they stared at Isabella Grant. Whispers rippled through the crowd. To think, Consort Grant is such a lascivious woman. Indeed. She normally appears so noble, yet she's so base. On the bed, Isabella Grant's face was ashen as she stared blankly at James Sinclair. James Sinclair's face was grim. He slowly released Emily Carter's chin. Confine Isabella Grant to the woodshed, he ordered coldly, awaiting punishment. Hearing this, Isabella Grant seemed to awaken from a dream. She abruptly struggled against the two guards restraining her, crying out, Your Highness, no. I've been wrongly accused. I've truly been wrongly accused, Your Highness. Humph. James Sinclair snorted, ignoring Isabella Grant's pleas. He flicked his sleeve and departed. Emily Carter watched James Sinclair's retreating figure, an unreadable glint in her eyes. In the dead of night, Emily Carter stealthily approached the woodshed where Isabella Grant was confined. She gazed coldly at Isabella Grant, who lay gasping on the ground. This woman, who just days ago had arrogantly sought her life, was now reduced to such a state. The fickleness of fate was truly laughable. Seeing Emily Carter, Isabella Grant immediately struggled to rise, her face contorted in a rage, wanting to hurl insults. But bound as she was, with a gag stuffed in her mouth, she could only utter muffled sounds, glaring at Emily Carter with venomous eyes. Emily Carter arched an eyebrow, looking down at Isabella Grant. It seems you feel greatly wronged, she observed coolly. Isabella Grant remained silent, but her expression spoke volumes. Emily Carter chuckled coldly. Do you know why you've ended up like this? Actually, you sealed your own fate from the very beginning. I don't offend unless offended, but if offended, I retaliate 100-fold. Isabella Grant, your life for a life is only just. Let me tell you, no one will pity you. Of course, Emily Carter said, squatting down and looking into Isabella Grant's eyes. She continued calmly, so you die understanding. I must tell you, your current state truly has nothing to do with me, but it doesn't matter anymore. Rest assured, tomorrow, after you're drowned in a pig cage, I'll definitely burn some joss paper for you. After all, we were once sisters. Isabella Grant trembled with rage, unable to retort, only glaring at Emily Carter. If looks could kill, even Emily Carter at her peak would be dead 1,000 times over. Don't glare at me anymore, Emily Carter sighed theatrically. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. The Vuong Gia has decided to inform the Grants. I hear they'll remove your name from the family register for the sake of their reputation. How pitiful, even in death, you'll be a wandering ghost, never to find peace. Hearing this, Isabella Grant thrashed about, clearly enraged by Emily Carter's words. A slight smirk played on Emily Carter's lips as she grasped Isabella Grant's face, looked directly into her eyes, and said sternly, you know your family better than I do. I simply couldn't, and wouldn't need to, lie to you, right? Resentment still lingered on Isabella Grant's face, but the malice in her eyes had diminished, replaced by a vague fear. Seeing this, Emily Carter removed the gag from Isabella Grant's mouth and pulled a packet of powder from her sleeve. With newfound confidence, she said, this is poison. Nothing special, it'll just make you die quicker. Your fate is sealed, death is inevitable, but you're lucky to have met me. Though I despise you, you're about to die, so I won't hold a grudge. Now you have a chance for a more dignified death. The choice is yours. Isabella Grant stared blankly at the poison in Emily Carter's hand. After a long moment, she closed her eyes, seemingly resigned. Taking a deep breath, she said, fine, I'll take it. I'll take the poison. But don't you get cocky, Emily Carter. Even in death, I won't let go of the one who wronged me. I'll make Lucas Coleman a ghost to haunt them. Emily Carter raised an eyebrow, placing her hands behind her back, and looked at Isabella Grant with a mocking expression. It seems you haven't quite grasped the situation. I'm not forcing you to take the poison, you're begging me for a clean death, secondary consort Grant, aren't you? Isabella Grant gritted her teeth, glaring at Emily Carter. After a long while, she finally said, yes. I'm begging you. Hashtag chapter 13, not worth a penny. Hearing this, Emily Carter smiled, grabbed Isabella Grant's chin, and poured the poison into her mouth. All right, now you can wait for death in peace. Don't worry, it won't be too painful. Emily Carter said, then stuffed the gag back into Isabella Grant's mouth, stepped back a few paces, and silently watched her. Soon, Isabella Grant's body began to tremble violently, her black hair flying wildly, appearing even more eerie under the moonlight. Suddenly, Isabella Grant stopped moving, collapsing into the darkness, lifeless. Emily Carter watched with satisfaction, a cold glint flashing in her eyes. She smirked slightly, turned, and left the warehouse. Having dealt with Isabella Grant, Emily Carter looked up at the sky. The moon had shifted eastward, it seemed dawn would break in less than half an hour. Glancing around, Emily Carter noticed the guard she had knocked unconscious was still out cold. After a moment's thought, she stealthily left Duke Oliver's manor. As a physician, she wouldn't be caught without medicinal herbs. While Duke Oliver's manor had a well-stocked dispensary, the thought that everything belonged to that damned James Sinclair made Emily Carter lose all interest in touching them. Fortunately, she still had the jade pendant, the one Benjamin Ford had almost taken. Though she couldn't tell if it was valuable, she figured it was worth a few taels of silver, enough to exchange for some common medicinal herbs. Relying on the fragmented memories in her head, Emily Carter fumbled her way, eventually reaching a nearby market without getting lost. Lance City, the capital of the Heavens Ascend Kingdom, boasted a flourishing economy, the most prosperous of its time. Even before dawn fully broke, this small marketplace buzzed with activity. It was Emily Carter's first glimpse of a historical marketplace, and the vibrant array of toys along the way nearly dazzled her. She mused that ancient times weren't as backward as she'd imagined. Many things from the modern era had been lost to time. After asking directions from numerous people, Emily Carter finally located a pawnshop named Orchid Pavilion. Perhaps due to the early hour, the Orchid Pavilion was empty save for a yawning attendant tidying the tables and chairs. He glanced at Emily Carter as she entered but didn't offer a greeting. Unfazed, Emily Carter politely inquired, "Excuse me, is your manager present?" The attendant yawned a few more times before lazily replying, "The manager just stepped out. Please wait a moment." Emily Carter nodded and waited patiently. After a while, a short, middle-aged man with a goatee entered, chuckling. He looked at Emily Carter and said cordially, "I am the manager of this Orchid Pavilion, my surname is Morris, and my given name is William. Are you here to pawn something?" Emily Carter silently noted the name, William Morris, an unusual name indeed. The overwhelming air of a merchant about him made her uncomfortable. She curtly replied, "Yes." "Ha ha," the goateed man chuckled, not taking offense. "May I see the item you wish to pawn?" Without further ado, Emily Carter retrieved the jade pendant from within her robes and placed it in William Morris's hand. She couldn't help but recall her transmigration, hoping the pendant was valuable. It would be a shame to have nearly been dishonored for a worthless trinket. "Miss, are you in urgent need of money?" William Morris examined the jade pendant for a moment but didn't immediately appraise it, instead asking a seemingly concerned question. "What do you mean?" Emily Carter eyed William Morris warily. "Oh, don't misunderstand," William Morris said, dangling the jade pendant before Emily Carter. "This jade pendant is of the most common variety. If it's a keepsake from someone important, I advise against pawning it. It truly isn't worth much. Enough with the chatter. Just tell me how much this jade pendant is worth." William Morris looked at Emily Carter, thought for a moment, and seriously held up 3 fingers. "At most, this much. 3 taels." Emily Carter mentally calculated how much medicinal herbs 3 taels of silver could buy, only to hear the manager shake his head. "No, 3 "What?" Emily Carter exclaimed, snatching the jade pendant back from William Morris. "You're saying this jade pendant is only worth 3 You're driving too hard a bargain." William Morris shook his head. "Truly, your jade pendant has too many flaws. Otherwise, it might be worth 1 or 2 taels. Frankly, even offering 3 for it is a potential loss for me. If you don't want to sell, I won't force you. Feel free to leave." Emily Carter looked at the jade pendant in her hand, resigned. "Fine, I'll sell it. Thank you for your time, manager." Emily Carter left the Orchid Pavilion, staring at the jade pendant in her hand, speechless. To think she almost lost her virtue over something worth a mere 3-1. The top battlefield medic of the 21st century had truly been cheapened. Still, it was the only thing she had from the day she transmigrated, so she'd keep it as a memento. Leaving the Orchid Pavilion, Emily Carter wandered aimlessly, her initial enthusiasm gone. The thought of her financial woes returned, a stark reminder of the saying, a single coin can confound a hero. Just as Emily Carter was caught in this dilemma, a commotion erupted further down the street. Lost in thought, she was nearly knocked to the ground by something flying towards her. Annoyed, she looked closely and realized the culprit was a person. The person was raggedly dressed, breathing shallowly, and muttering deliriously. They struggled to get up from where they'd landed against Emily Carter, then stumbled forward. Their gait was peculiar. Emily Carter observed that their ribs were mostly broken, but not recently, they were old injuries. What astonished her was that with such injuries, they shouldn't be able to stand, let alone move. This person was clearly no ordinary individual. #### Chapter 14, The Wager. Looking up, Emily Carter noticed the person heading towards an apothecary, the same one they'd just been thrown out of. Curious, she followed, observing as the person tried to re-enter, only to be immediately rebuffed by a shop assistant. Witnessing this several times, Emily Carter couldn't ignore it any longer. A healer refusing to treat the sick was wrong, but to physically eject them was inhumane. She spoke up, "Hey, aren't you going too far? Treating a seriously ill person like this, do you have no conscience?" Hearing this, the shop assistants turned their heads. One, clad in green, sized Emily Carter up, sneering, "And who might this ragged beggar be, presuming to interfere?" "A woman, no less. If you want to meddle, fetch your husband." Emily Carter's eyes turned cold. What about being poor? What about being a woman? Do you have a problem with that? Have you heard the story of this dynasty's founding emperor? He started as a beggar, but what happened then? He built an empire. What's wrong with being poor? And what's wrong with being a woman? Aren't the Empress Dowager and the Empress women? Do you dare insult them? For that matter, isn't your mother a woman? Without your mother, where would you be? You. Rendered speechless, the assistant's face turned crimson, about to explode when a man in green emerged from the inner chambers. "Young lady, your eloquence is admirable. However, Bright Healing Clinic is a business. If someone is so poor they can't afford treatment, what obligation do we have to heal them?" Emily Carter assessed the man in green, scoffed, and said coldly, "I think it's not that you won't treat him, but that you simply can't. Which madwoman is this, daring to be so disrespectful to our master Lucas Coleman?" Before the man in green could speak, the assistant Emily Carter had just silenced yelled. Emily Carter's gaze turned icy as Lucas Coleman barked, "Insolent! Show some respect." He then turned to Emily Carter, "Please excuse my uncouth staff. You're right, I examined this gentleman's injury. It wasn't initially serious, but due to neglect and his attempts to realign the bone using internal energy, it's become chronic. Treating him is risky, a slight misstep could be fatal. My reluctance stems partly from his inability to pay, and partly from the risk." Emily Carter sneered, "Humph, in the end, you're just unskilled. If you can't heal and save lives, what right do you have to run an apothecary? How laughable." Lucas Coleman's expression finally changed. "I believe I've been sufficiently courteous. Are you pushing me because you think Bright Healing Clinic is an easy target?" Emily Carter scoffed, "I'm simply calling out your hypocrisy. What if I said I could mend his broken bone? A glint appeared in Lucas Coleman's eyes. Are you serious? Emily Carter's lips curled slightly. Naturally. Good. Lucas Coleman clapped his hands, gazing intently at Emily Carter. Milady just now spoke loftily about not underestimating the poor, surely because you yourself are quite impoverished. You've come to this bright healing clinic, presumably seeking medical aid. If that's the case, would you care to make a wager with me? Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. It's simple, Lucas Coleman said, gesturing towards the man with broken ribs. Let's wager on him. I know I lack the ability to heal him, but Milady spoke so boldly just now, so why don't we wager on whether you can cure him? If you succeed, you can take any medicine here, I won't object. What do you say? Humph. Emily Carter smirked. And what if I fail to cure him? Fail? Lucas Coleman smiled, a cold glint in his eyes. Very simple, you'll test the medicine yourself. Test the medicine? Hearing this, many gaped at Lucas Coleman in astonishment. Was this the same affable and approachable Lucas Coleman they knew? How could he make such a terrifying demand? I accept. Emily Carter showed no surprise. The moment Lucas Coleman appeared, she'd smelled the mingled scents of various medicines on him, including several potent poisons. Clearly, this man was not as simple as he seemed. Seeing Emily Carter agree, everyone was even more astonished, several nearly dropping their jaws. Then they heard her continue, but, if I win, I want one more condition. Hearing this, many breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed this woman wasn't completely mad, she was probably adding a condition to force Lucas Coleman to back down. Who were they kidding? In Lance City, perhaps even in the entire Heavens Ascent Kingdom, those with medical skills surpassing Lucas Coleman could be counted on one hand. Even if such a person existed, it certainly couldn't be this plainly dressed woman. Speak your terms. If I win, you not only have to give me any medicinal ingredient I want, but you also have to rename this bright healing clinic to, I am a quack. Lucas Coleman considered for a moment, then shook his head. That I cannot do. The name wasn't chosen by me, so naturally I have no right to change it. However, I can hang a sign at the entrance with those 4 words, and display it whenever I'm seeing patients. Will that suffice? Emily Carter smiled. Deal. Hey, you're wagering on me, did I agree to this? A weak, cold voice rang out. It was the man with the broken ribs. Even Lucas Coleman can't cure me. What makes you think you can? If you kill me, who am I supposed to complain to? Exactly. That's right. At least that fellow will live for a few more days without treatment. Wouldn't it be a great loss if this woman kills him? Hashtag chapter 15, target of attack. Hearing the man's words, many onlookers began to murmur, some even laughing openly, looking at Emily Carter with disdain. Emily Carter's expression remained unchanged. She was about to speak when Lucas Coleman interjected, this gentleman makes a valid point. It was my transgression to make this wager with this young lady without considering the consequences. I apologize, gentlemen. It seems we should cancel the agreement. It can't be cancelled, Emily Carter started, but before she could finish, the surroundings erupted in a cacophony of voices, all telling her not to cause trouble or risk her life for money. Clearly, no one believed she could surpass Lucas Coleman. In an instant, Emily Carter became the target of their attacks. I believe in her. Just then, a gentle voice, smooth as jade, cut through the crowd. Emily Carter looked up to see a young man in blue robes standing in the distance, smiling at her. His jade-like features and refined air gave him a truly handsome appearance. Even more admirable was the aura of a seasoned warrior about him, barely concealing a gentle nature. With just a glance, Emily Carter held him in high regard. "I am Henry Blake. Would everyone give me face and allow this young lady a try?" Henry Blake? Could it be the General Henry Blake? Heavens! I've actually met Henry Blake. This isn't a dream, is it? The crowd, which had been quiet, buzzed with excitement upon hearing the name Henry Blake. This king's woman, no one here dares disrespect her. General Lamb is kind, but it's unnecessary. Just then, a clear, slightly cold voice cut through the crowd. "Oh! So handsome! What's going on today? I've seen two incredibly handsome men. Oh, heavens, the gods are truly favoring me." As James Sinclair appeared, many infatuated girls stared with shining eyes. James Sinclair ignored them, walking straight to Emily Carter's side. His voice was icy. "You're quite bold, sneaking out of Duke Oliver's manor like this." Frowning, Emily Carter looked coldly at James Sinclair. "I've told you, there's nothing between us. Where I go is my own business." "Humph! Nothing between us?" James Sinclair smirked, leaning close to Emily Carter's ear. "So you're not planning to take responsibility for what happened that night?" "You?" Emily Carter glared at James Sinclair, eyes blazing. "Shameless. Is that so?" James Sinclair chuckled. "But I don't mind being a little more shameless." "Humph! Emily." Carter snorted, ignoring James Sinclair. Glancing at Henry Blake, she suddenly shifted her weight onto her right foot, lunging towards the man with the broken rib. With a forceful right palm strike to his waist, she simultaneously pivoted on her left foot, following through with a left-handed chop to his side. Her movements were fluid. By the time everyone reacted, they only heard the man cry out in pain, followed immediately by a joyous shout. "I'm healed. I'm really healed." He twisted and turned his torso excitedly. Everyone was astonished. James Sinclair was even more shocked, staring at Emily Carter. Henry Blake, meanwhile, assessed her with undisguised admiration. Emily Carter, oblivious to their reactions, strode towards Lucas Coleman. "I've healed him. Can we fulfill our agreement now?" "This." Lucas Coleman looked at Emily Carter with a complex expression. Reluctantly, he checked the healed man's pulse, finally sighing in defeat. "Young lady, you are truly a hidden talent." Emily Carter chuckled coldly, "I haven't time for your flattery. Can you fulfill the agreement or not?" About that, Lucas Coleman's previous swagger vanished, replaced by a troubled expression. Seeing this, Emily Carter scoffed. Without further ado, she grabbed Lucas Coleman's hands, swiftly kicked his right kneecap with her left foot, sending him tumbling to his knees in agony. She then twisted his arms behind his back, crippling them. "Ack!" Lucas Coleman screamed, his arms going limp. "Consider this a lesson. If I catch you doing anything shady again, don't expect any mercy." Emily Carter glared at Lucas Coleman before releasing him. A heavy silence fell over Bright Healing Clinic. The sudden violence of Emily Carter's actions had stunned everyone present. "Haha, what a capable young lady. I'm truly impressed," Henry Blake said with a laugh. "Would I have the honor of inviting you for a drink?" General Lamb, I believe I stated that she is mine. What exactly did you mean by that? James Sinclair interjected coldly before Emily Carter could respond. He pulled her towards him. Come with me. Haha, my apologies for the intrusion, Your Highness. I merely admired this young lady's talent, nothing more. Please don't misunderstand. Despite the sharp edge in James Sinclair's voice, Henry Blake remained unfazed, his demeanor polite and composed. James Sinclair snorted. It's best if there's nothing more. With that, James Sinclair pulled Emily Carter out of Bright Healing Clinic. As she struggled, his voice, soft yet menacing, reached her ear. If you don't want a repeat of that incident, you'd best behave. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to do something to you right here in the street. Emily Carter gritted her teeth, glaring at James Sinclair before finally ceasing her struggles. A satisfied smile touched James Sinclair's lips. Ignoring the hatred in Emily Carter's eyes, he gently placed his arm around her waist and escorted her towards Duke Oliver's manor. Behind them, Henry Blake watched their retreating figures, a strange glint in his eyes. Chapter 16, A Change of Perspective. Once more Lucas Coleman watched Emily Carter's retreating figure, a venomous glint flashing in his eyes, yet tinged with a hint of fear. This woman was truly not simple. Having met him only once, she could guess his transgression against morality. How terrifying! Those around him, who had been so enthusiastic in their agreement moments before, were now stunned by the scene. Such a seemingly impoverished woman was actually a person of the third prince. Good heavens, what was going on today? What was this world coming to? Emily Carter naturally didn't have the mood to care about what those behind her were thinking. Returning to Duke Oliver's manor, she was about to go to her courtyard when James Sinclair called her back. Woman, has anyone ever told you that you have no understanding of propriety? Did I say you could leave? Emily Carter turned around and looked coldly at James Sinclair. Does your highness have anything else to say? James Sinclair chuckled coldly, suddenly leaned down, and kissed her deeply. Emily Carter struggled in vain, so she let him have his way, only her body gradually heated up, and a strange tremor rose in her heart. Emily Carter was startled and tried to suppress it, but James Sinclair released her, the corners of his lips curled up, his narrow phoenix eyes gleaming with a wicked charm. Nothing to say, just something I wanted to do. Her heart couldn't help but pound. Trying to calm herself, Emily Carter coldly opened her mouth. The Emperor is critically ill. I advise you not to focus on matters of men and women. After all, Emily Carter said, stepping closer to James Sinclair, her narrow eyes slightly narrowed. It seems, this throne of yours, is quite precarious. James Sinclair's face paled, his eyes instantly turning icy. Who told you this news? Humph. Emily Carter sneered. Do I need someone to tell me? Should I tell you that I deduced these things myself? James Sinclair's eyes flickered. You deduced it yourself? Yes. Emily Carter nodded without hesitation. I've been in your manor for a while now. It's not strange that I can deduce it. Moreover, you should be very clear about my every move, who I meet, what I say. You should know everything. Do you think someone could have told me? James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter, his expression complex. I find you more and more interesting, but this prince still wants to know how you deduced it. The corners of Emily Carter's lips curled up slightly, but her words were icy. Unfortunately, I still loathe you. You want to know? Do you think I'll tell you? Not telling me? James Sinclair's eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint flashing within them. He suddenly grabbed Emily Carter's hands. Then it seems my words weren't effective enough. In that case, I should use my body to communicate better," James Sinclair said, about to pull Emily Carter aside. "Wait." Emily Carter bit her lip. "I can tell you, but you have to promise me you won't force me anymore." Hearing this, a complex light flashed in James Sinclair's eyes. "Do you loathe this prince that much?" Emily Carter gritted her teeth. "Yes." James Sinclair's face paled, and after a moment, he gritted out a single word, "Fine." Ignoring James Sinclair's anger, Emily Carter calmly opened her mouth. "It's actually very simple. You're out of the manor every other day, but every time you return, you have the scent of herbs on you, and they're all extremely rare herbs. They all have one thing in common: they're used for dying people, either to prolong life or to alleviate symptoms. Such herbs, let alone ordinary people, even ordinary princes can't afford them. That's the first thing." Emily Carter smiled and looked at James Sinclair. "Secondly, these days, there have been quite a few strangers coming to the manor. Although they dress ordinarily, I know they are all physicians. There's no one sick in the manor. To have the esteemed Prince Sinclair so concerned, in this world, Emily Carter sat down gracefully, took a sip of tea, and continued, "So I guess, the Emperor must be seriously ill." Not bad, quite meticulous." James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter. "But haven't you heard the saying, the more you know, the faster you die? You know so much, aren't you afraid this prince will kill you?" The corners of Emily Carter's lips curved. "I'm just a common woman, without any power behind me, and I don't care about fame or fortune. Your Highness has no reason to kill me. It seems I still underestimated you." James Sinclair's face was expressionless, his voice laced with an unreadable meaning. Emily Carter raised an eyebrow, about to say something, when she heard the steward announce from outside, "Your Highness, eldest Miss Amelia Carter of the minister's estate has come to pay her respects." James Sinclair silently looked at Emily Carter, seeing her lack of reaction. For some reason, a flicker of anger rose in his heart. "I understand. I'll be right there." "Yes." The steward respectfully retreated, but James Sinclair didn't immediately go out. Instead, he looked at Emily Carter, his fingertips lightly tapping the table. "Tell me, if I marry your elder sister, what do you think?" Emily Carter looked up at James Sinclair and said with a faint smile, "Your Highness's words are amusing. Who you want to marry is your own business. Why ask me?" Hearing this, James Sinclair's eyes paused, his fingers gripping Emily Carter's chin, forcing her to look directly at him, the corners of his lips curling into a meaningful smile. "It seems you always forget your own identity and provoke this prince again and again." Emily Carter brushed James Sinclair's hand away and couldn't help but sneer. "Your Highness overestimates me. Clearly, your Highness is narrow-minded. Why put all the blame on a little woman like me?" James Sinclair had witnessed Emily Carter's sharpness, and now he discovered her ability to twist black into white was truly remarkable. "Since you know this prince is narrow-minded, then obediently don't argue with this prince again, otherwise," James Sinclair trailed off. "Otherwise what? Are you going to force someone to do something they don't want to do?" Emily Carter looked coldly at James Sinclair, her eyes filled with undisguised mockery and contempt. Emily Carter's words, unsurprisingly, angered James Sinclair. His face paled, and he suddenly stepped forward, forcefully pressing Emily Carter onto the table.